So, let's look at a few news stories. So, John Bolton, the first two people that Trump indicted in his revenge tour appear to be completely innocent, Letitia James and James Comey. And so he couldn't get a real prosecutor to sign off on those. He had to bring in his fake beauty queen prosecutor, who was completely incompetent, which is what he usually does. And she signed off on it and wrote the briefs badly, and the judges are laughing at them and all that. But John Bolton seems to have actually done some bad things. While he was the National Security Advisor, he took detailed notes of what happened every day, and he put them in an AOL account and emailed them to his wife and daughter, who had no security clearance. And AOL is absolutely not secure enough for that. And he kept that up, and he kept the printouts even when the government officials came to him after he was no longer the National Security Advisor and said, you better give us back everything confidential and classified, and he didn't do it. So we'll see if his lawyer can get him off. But it does seem like this is a real case where he actually did some real bad things. And it does seem like his only concern right from the start was just to get this stuff and write it in a book. And he was running it by his wife and daughter for comments on how to make the book more exciting. And they were telling him to go take actions to change the national security activities to make it a more exciting story and stuff. So it does sound like Trump is not wrong when he says he's a really bad guy. So a major company bought 10,000 Tesla robots to try to replace human workers, and I think this is an pharmaceutical infrastructure company, Farm Agri, and they're going to use them in farm operations and in pharmaceutical ingredient synthesis and prescription drug manufacturing facilities. So that's not entirely clear what they're going to be doing, and it will be interesting to see if the Tesla robots are up to this task. I've seen pretty bad reviews of these Tesla robots, but if somebody's going to actually try to put 10,000 of them in industrial production, that'll be a good test to find out how good they are. And there's another one here. I wonder if I can find it. On the same type. Guess it's not going to let me find it, all right. There was some place where American executives went to China and saw that China is vigorously automating everything with robots that work, and they have much cheaper robots, much better robots, much cheaper and better electric cars and everything else. And the American companies are feeling very threatened by the fact that China seems to be pulling ahead of us rapidly. And certainly with the current administration ending all scientific research funding and just switching us into a theocracy where everything is about pushing a bunch of false statements, then I don't think we're going to be catching up anytime soon. So this was interesting. This guy got a job interview from a real well-known blockchain company, and someone had a LinkedIn profile that really looked good. LinkedIn didn't know it was fake or take it down, and they told him he had to analyze this code, and he was just about to run the code when he decided to just ask his local AI agent, which I think was Cursor. He asked Cursor, hey, look at that code. Does that code look dangerous? And Cursor found the dangerous part of the code. So I think this is very interesting. I'd like to figure out how to give students Cursor, certainly next semester in the AI course. We should be using Cursor, which is what all the professional developers are using. And we should be testing AI as a vulnerability scanner and a malware scanner and see how good it is. I think that's a very interesting result, and it suggests an interesting use of AI. Yeah, this is the one. Western executives were shaken after visiting China. There's no people, everything is robotic, and it's heavily automated. Their manufacturing industry is very automated. So that's the thing. They're very nervous about China pulling ahead. So, as you know, the United States Trump administration has destroyed something like 5 boats near Venezuela, and now he says he's going to invade Venezuela and force a regime change, I think. And what they've done is they find a small boat, which is apparently too small to actually make a trip to America, and they just blow it up, killing everybody on board, and then they say those people were hauling drugs. And they don't have any evidence that they're hauling drugs, and they certainly could have just disabled the boat and taken these people prisoner, which is the standard thing you do. And so what they're doing would be a war crime if we are at war, but we're not even at war. So it's basically just piracy and murder. Go out on the sea, and blow up people and then make up a story about them later that you can't prove. So the admiral in charge of this has quit, which is the standard thing military people do when they're given illegal orders. And he says, I'm not going to be responsible for these war crimes you're committing. And so it does show that everything Trump's been doing is fantastically illegal. I'm seeing an increasing number of stories saying they're all going to be in jail as soon as the Democrats regain power. Curtis Yarvin, the intellectual thinker behind all this stuff, is thinking of fleeing the country because he's so afraid that he would be liable, which I think in his case is just crazy paranoia, because he's just an academic and all he did was write documents and give speeches recommending all these policies. He didn't actually do any of it. So I think everything he did is covered by the First Amendment. But the people who actually implemented these policies, almost everything they're doing is illegal. And people are getting quite upset about the fact that now they've shut down the government. Trump just took money from a pot that wasn't allocated for this and used it to pay some of his ICE agents or something. And they say that is extremely illegal and unconstitutional, because the whole point of the Constitution is that the president doesn't control the funding, Congress does. And Trump has basically shut off Congress completely and decided that he's just a king. He acts alone, and there are no checks and balances anywhere on anything he wants to do. And that will be true if we have a dictator, which is what he wants and what Curtis Yarvin wanted. But if we actually have Democrats elected and return to a democratic form of government, then it's not true. So we'll see what happens. Now, RFK Jr. hates vaccines because he's a complete lunatic, and he's convinced people to quit taking the vaccines. So now whooping cough is spreading like crazy. The one that I haven't seen yet is polio spreading. We can expect that soon too. The job interview news was the phishing email. I can bring back the link. This is the one. I'll throw it in the Twitch chat if you want to know more about that. All right. All right. Anyway, all right. Good. Yes, it was more than an email. I mean, he actually had a job interview, and then they asked him to analyze some code as part of the job interview. So he was just going to run it, but he decided to check it first. And I thought it was interesting the way he checked it, and that apparently worked. Right. So this little guy is a YubiKey, and apparently you can take YubiKeys and you can put passkeys on them, and then you can carry them around and they will work on different computers. That's what he's saying. That sounds interesting. So now you can use passwordless authentication and carry the thing around from place to place. So that sounds like an interesting alternative to passwords. The prime problem with YubiKeys is that they're tied to one device, and I don't quite understand how he can move them from device to device like this and they'll still work, but it's interesting. He claims it works. I wonder if you have to store a different YubiKey on that device for each computer you use. I'm not sure. And this is pretty horrible. So Microsoft, when Windows 11 has turned BitLocker on by default. So when you install Windows 11, it automatically encrypts every drive. So this guy had a machine running Windows 10, and he installed Windows 11, and he had several extra drives with all kinds of useful data on them, and Windows 11 automatically encrypted all those drives, and he didn't notice that and make a note of the password as it went by. And so all that stuff is lost forever. So this is important to know. This is what tends to happen with encryption. The number one thing encryption does is lock your authorized users out. Whenever you do implement encryption at a company, you always have to have some kind of backup recovery system to get back in if the original user loses their key. There should be a second person, a recovery agent, that has a second key to get in every time you encrypt something, because this happens all the time. People encrypt things, then they lose that password, and then your data is lost. But Windows 11 doing it automatically without making it obvious is pretty harsh. You end up encrypting stuff without even realizing it's happening. But this is very typical of Microsoft. They always invent a new feature, and they always slam it onto you. Like they're slamming all kinds of AI into Windows 11 that you can't take out, which is highly risky, and a lot of users would like to not install the AI, but Microsoft never cares. They always just ram the new feature down your throat whether you like it or not. That's the way they are. So this is interesting. I've seen quite a few studies that show that people that take vaccines have a much lower risk of Alzheimer's. even apparently unrelated vaccines like a flu vaccine, a COVID vaccine, a shingles vaccine. And here they showed that people that have cancer and are undergoing cancer therapy live much longer if they get a COVID vaccine. So it's not just protecting them from COVID, it's something about exciting the immune system. I see a question, no other ways to unlock? No, certainly not. I mean, that's the whole point of encrypting something, is nobody can get in without the key. There's no backdoor, there's no recovery method. If there were, the encryption would be useless. That's the whole point of it. And when BitLocker first came out, it was not on by default. You had to turn it on, like Windows Vista and Windows 10 and such, and then Microsoft would have pop-up screens saying, you better not lose the key, and it would even offer to make an online copy of the key in your Microsoft MSN.com account or some kind of cloud account, and it would print up a thing and say print this recovery key and save it somewhere. They went for a lot of effort to make sure you couldn't accidentally encrypt stuff and not be warned, but apparently it's easier to overlook the warnings in Windows 11 now. And that's the problem with all encryption. Once you encrypt something, if you lose the key, that stuff is gone, gone, gone. All right. Anyway, that's enough news. Let me stop this.